Hey everyone, welcome to the Steamboat Institute Facebook page. We're so glad that you're here. We do pop on occasionally with Facebook Lives, and we have a fun one today. I'm Ericka Andersen with the Steamboat Institute, and today I'm speaking with Laura Carno. She's the Executive Director of Faster Colorado, an organization that trains armed school staffers, as well as a former Freedom Conference speaker with us at Steamboat. Laura, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I would love to start by asking you, just a little bit more about who you are, and then also what makes you passionate about this issue of gun safety and working with Faster Colorado.
Sure. So I sort of tripped and fell into kind of political topics back in 2008. I had a long career, 25 years in the banking industry and financial services. And during some tumultuous financial services times, I was looking for something different to do and volunteered for some political projects. And one thing led to another. And so now, as you mentioned, I run Faster Colorado, where we train armed school staff. I have a taxpayer advocacy group in Colorado Springs, where we keep an eye on where our local money's going, and I'm working with some other folks around the state and country to set up their own similar sorts of taxpayer advocacy groups. And then most recently, I've become a senior fellow with the Independent Women's Forum as kind of their gun policy expert since Nancy Pelosi took over leadership in the House in January, and we thought, boy, this is going to be a very busy year with gun policy. So all of that kind of keeps me very busy.
Yeah, you have a lot going on, and you have a book, which I'm going to ask you about in a little bit. But
Sure.
But I want to hear more about what you do with Faster. For people that don't understand, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about gun safety, about training teachers. There's a lot of negativity out there. Tell us a little bit more about it and why people shouldn't be so afraid.
Sure. So FASTER stands for Faculty Administrator Safety Training and Emergency Response. And it's a program that started in Ohio in the days following Sandy Hook. And I brought FASTER here to Colorado. And we're in our third training year. We've trained over 200 Colorado school staff so far. And why people should not be concerned about it is a couple of reasons. Number one, here in Colorado, for example, it's been legal for school boards to authorize armed staff for the past 16 years. And it's been legal in many, many states for about that long, if not longer. And there's never been a problem with it. All of the what ifs, people say, what if these things happen? It's great for us to ask those questions, but those what ifs haven't happened. But what we do know keeps happening is that deranged killers keep getting into schools and killing our kids and killing school staff with nobody to stop them. So it's a great program. It's actually growing nationwide. And by program, I mean the concept of school districts nationwide arming staff, regardless of where they get their training, because parents and grandparents are saying to their schools, hey, I want my kids returned safely every day. What are you doing about that? So this is a very parent-led process across the country. And these policies are pretty quietly implemented, but I would guess there's probably 10,000 or so armed staff nationwide in our kids' schools today.
So instead of people being less interested in that, in the waves of school shooting, you're seeing more interest in it. And I always think it's so, the comparison is always so stark to me when we think about the children of politicians and celebrities, going in places where they are protected, and whereas just regular Americans in our public schools, they are not as protected. And so I guess maybe, do you have any words for maybe someone who's skeptical, maybe someone who's just not sure how they feel about this?
Sure. And I'd like to say to all those folks, our number one goal is to prevent any of this from happening. For goodness sakes, nobody wants to be in a position where somebody with a firearm has to confront a killer in a school and stop them with deadly force. That is the absolute last resort, a last resort we want to be prepared for. But we talk about school safety and security as a multi-layered policy for schools. You lock your doors, you have good physical security, you have mental health resources, you have good practices for if somebody, for example, as keeps happening, if somebody keeps saying to fellow students, I'm going to come back and shoot up the school. what happens in that school. We've seen in Broward County that they simply ignored it, and until he came back and killed a bunch of people. So there's all kinds of layers of security. But we have to ask ourselves the question: if every one of those layers breaks down, who is going to protect the children? And we have so many good, solid citizens who work in our school today who have been carrying concealed firearms off campus for years. They've already made that decision to protect themselves and their families if, God forbid, the worst thing happened to them. And today they would be disarmed going to work where they really feel the most vulnerable. And so what we continue to see is teachers and janitors and coaches and lots of people shielding children with their bodies from bullets, because that's all they have. And we want those school staff to be able to protect children and live, not just have the only choice to die to protect children.
And it's always a voluntary thing, right? Like nobody has to participate.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that question. The number one myth about armed staff programs, and they say it almost in the same language every time. So I'll say it: you can't make a teacher carry a gun. And I would like to say nobody anywhere in the country has ever suggested that you should force somebody to carry a firearm. And you don't need everybody in a school to carry a firearm. If a school has an armed staff policy and they have 5 or 10 or however many given the size of their school, that's plenty. They need to be positioned in places to provide good coverage, but it's completely not necessary for every school staffer to be armed. And similar to just ordinary concealed carry citizens, where there are a lot of concealed carry citizens in a state or a city, the crime is lower because criminals know in places like Washington, D.C. or Chicago or places like that don't have easy access for law-abiding citizens to be able to carry a concealed firearm. The criminals know that, and they feel very safe holding people up and committing assaults because they don't think that they're going to be met with deadly force. So same kind of math problem.
And do you feel, because of the work that you do you feel like you get targeted or discriminated against online, or do you get a lot of pushback? I assume there are some people that are not happy with what you're doing.
Sure. Twitter is Twitter. So
not the real world though, really.
Not the real world. Certainly there are people who push back and say things like, I will never let my child go to a school that has armed guards of any sort. And to those people, I say, great. You should go to your kid's school and say that, because I'm a firm believer that parents should be the ones directing the education upbringing of their kids. And if you feel very strongly that there should never be an armed guard, there are people who don't even want school resource officers in their kids' schools. Yeah. And I say, great. The charter school laws here in Colorado are very open to parents getting together and saying, hey, these schools don't meet my needs. I want to start this kind of school. Open one that guarantees nobody will be armed. I don't want my grandkids going there, but that's not up to me for somebody else's kids. So yeah, there's that. And, there's the occasional person who says terrible things about the work that I do. And that's fine. We had one a few years ago that crossed the line and we ended up with a criminal conviction. But, it's when you put yourself out there as in the public, speaking about public policy, there are always going to be people that disagree. But I consider myself a cheerful warrior for freedom, including the freedom for people to choose their own self-defense. So,
well, I love what you say about parents going down to the school and making their voices heard, because that's sort of the beauty of America, is that we can have these two opposing viewpoints, these two discussions, and people can make choices and shouldn't be forced one way or the other. And I love that you can respect that side of the argument, and hopefully others can respect your side. I mean, I totally can put myself in the shoes of someone who maybe wouldn't, be in that place where they feel comfortable with that. But again, America, so we get to choose. We have all these options, and it's great. So I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned your taxpayer accountability organization or website that you run, and then that kind of goes along with your book, which is called Government Ruins Nearly Everything, which I think a lot of our our people at the Steamboat Institute may sort of resonate with what you're saying there. So tell us why you started the website and the organization, and then why you wrote the book.
Sure. So springstaxpayers.com, we keep an eye on Colorado Springs government, El Paso County government, and other municipalities in the area. And we started the organization because I kept opposing tax increases that kept going onto the ballot. And by the way, this isn't a Republican or a Democrat thing. It was bipartisan people putting these tax increases on the ballot. And I had what I felt was documentation that the city didn't need that extra money. They had the money, they just needed to properly prioritize. So after opposing a few ballot issues, we said, gosh, we really should be here every single day. And this is a great idea for anywhere across the country for folks to do. At a minimum, we gather all of the news for the area. We have it on our website, and we do on our social media pages, and then we do a weekly newsletter, which those are on our website for folks to take a look at as well. But if a city does nothing other than gather the information, and so that it's easy for people to find. And then there are a lot of times when our local paper or TV stations aren't interested in digging into things in the city. So we do, and we file a lot of open records requests to find information that maybe politicians wish that wasn't out in the public. And so we've done a lot of original reporting and that sort of thing. So it's hard work, but I'll tell you what, there are a lot of citizens who are very grateful that somebody's out there keeping an eye on the government, because we used to be able to trust journalists to dig in, and that's just not the journalism model anymore. So citizen activists have to do that.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't heard the term citizen journalist in a while. It kind of had a heyday, I guess, like back in like 2012-ish.
Sure.
But I don't think the importance of that has been diminished at all, and maybe is even more important now. Although I think there's been a lot of diverse news sources that kind of developed out of that digital or that citizen journalism thing. So we have a lot more sort of news outlets across the spectrum, whereas before we didn't. And so I think that was kind of the outgrowth of that. I think that's such important work. It's like we need one of those in every single city in the United States. And I know there are a lot of people across the country that do take that on themselves, but it is up to us, and just a good reminder that we all need to be proactive citizens and just taking responsibility. So because the government will, whether or not they're like doing it on purpose, like things happen and they spend money in ways that are irresponsible, and they need to be held accountable.
Yeah. And if anybody's listening across the country that wants to understand the model, wants some help getting something set up in their town, we actually launched a project of Springs taxpayers called Your Town Taxpayers, where you enter your town.
Yeah.
And folks can go to yourtowntaxpayers.com and check that out. We're happy to help folks get set up. And honestly, you've got these municipal politicians who go to meetings all around the country, and they learn about red light cameras and road dieting and all kinds of crazy stuff that sounds great to city planners, but a lot of citizens say they don't want their money spent on that. And so we're able to, because so many of the same things are happening nationwide, we're able to help folks understand, okay, here's some research for you to take a look at, and so they can make the decision on whether that's something that they want there or not.
That sounds like a really awesome resource. Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing a little bit of your story with us. And we're so thankful to have you as part of the Steamboat Institute family. And we will direct people to your website and all your stuff. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.